This is an article that landed on my desk in a very timely fashion. You may have seen I posted a vertical video within the last week or so that was specifically sharing an interview clip that I think is actually from the interview that is linked here. That was with Anneke Lucas, who is a human child trafficking survivor. She has written a book. I believe she has a podcast. She's spoken extensively about the reality of the pedophile network that we have in our world that is now being laid bare, thanks to the release of the Epstein Files and other tireless work that human rights activists and victim survivors have been doing. And I wanted to read this because it includes what I presented in that video that I put up, the sound bite, the few minutes that I clipped, because of what Anneke says about these networks, and specifically about how she came into contact with it and what I think we can deduce about society as a whole from listening to people like Anneke. So anyway, let me read this. The headline didn't get translated because it's in a different language, but it says here, subheading, "Victim of a pedophile network. I was a 6-year-old slave. Our children were gifts for the Bilderberg people." Children as secret currency, satanic rituals in the basements of cathedrals, and an aristocracy for which pedophilia is the norm. This is the chilling story of Anneke Lucas, a victim of an elite network in Belgium. Sold by her own mother at the age of 6, she describes how senior politicians, Freemasons, and members of Opus Dei use children for entertainment and blackmail at the highest level. In a shocking testimony published and translated on Facebook, Lucas reveals how during a meeting of the Bilderberg Club in 1972, she was forced to witness the ritual murder of a 7-year-old boy, organized as a gift for an American billionaire. Anneke's story is a brutal look at an invisible culture of sadism in which power is bought with innocence and crimes remain hidden behind oaths of silence in secret societies. Anneke Lucas, a victim of a pedophile ring in Belgium, author, public speaker, and advocate for victims of violence, talks about her childhood. She was sold at the age of 6 by her mother for the entertainment of the elite. There is a culture within some of the aristocracy that I don't want you to know about. It's not about everyone, it's just some, but they have such negative influence that in a culture where child abuse is normal and extreme things happen, there are some very sadistic members of the aristocracy, and in the early years, I was sometimes given to these people. So this is a quote from her. So in the early years, I wasn't involved in any religious rituals, and I think that was mainly due to the fact that this minister, who had started out as a butcher and was middle class and had risen up, was not a believing Satanist himself at all. But when I was 9 years old, in 1972, the Bilderberg meeting took place in Belgium, and that was great for people in the network, as I called it then, the Level Club. And it's really important to emphasize here that whether or not people participated in ritualistic things does not therefore, if they did, that doesn't therefore indicate that they wholesale buy into all of the inherent meaning and symbolism and whatever spiritual end goal or result they're supposed to be for participating in that thing. I think that that's a really, really important thing to point out, because I've seen people running with the Epstein Files saying, our world's run by Satanists and all these people are Satanists and they support Baal and blah, blah, blah. And I think that maybe some of them do, right? I think, sure, but people can believe anything, but believing in something does not therefore give that thing legitimacy. And I think that is the bottom line here. Just because people are engaging in rituals, just because people are putting on robes and doing unspeakable acts with children, does not mean that they believe in whatever deity it is that's supposed to be getting revered by doing whatever it is that they're doing, or that they believe or worship Satan himself or anything else like that. I could see this whole conversation with the Epstein Files going down a bad route and reigniting the satanic panic of the 70s and 80s that we had here in this country and elsewhere. It kind of swept the globe at that point in time. And I think that satanic panic detracted from critically important conversations that we needed to be having about society and people and culture and everything else. And that kind of got washed away by this like religious fervor and this just fear of demons, of the demonic, of like unseen evil forces that are going to come and yank you out of your bed in the night. And I am a pretty spiritual person. I have had extremely spiritual experiences. I believe in a higher power, and I believe in evil, like real malignant, hyper present evil. But the thing of it is, I don't think it manifests the ways that people think that it does or would like to think that it does. It's not convenient. It's not easy to pin down. It's not overt. It's not obvious. And I think that as easy as it would be to say, oh, well, these people were all doing this because they're all Satanists and they worship Satan, that is an oversimplification, I think, of a very complex situation that all really comes back to money and power. And that is the like ultimate message behind Anneke Lucas's testimony. And I've listened to multiple interviews with her at this point, and her testimony has remained consistent throughout. It's not about whether or not people are worshiping Satan because they believe that the ground is, you open it up and there's like fiery hell down there. It's much less about that and much more about power and money. And you get to a certain point in the world, you climb that, proverbial ladder to power and money. And at a certain point, that is all that is left. It is just pedophiles all the way to the top. And I think we need to have a conversation about why that is and how that has happened. But let's not get it twisted and distracted by thinking that like it's because these people are like these religious nuts who are worshiping Satan and everything that they're doing is in the service of that. Because I think if you start to think that way, you're going to miss the forest for the trees. That's just my opinion. Feel free to disagree with me, but that is what I think. Reading on here, she says, children were kind of the highest level and were mostly used for blackmail. But there were also powerful people with very sadistic desires who also catered to, and that was also connected to the royal family. I mean, the aristocracy, certain people from the aristocracy. The culture was such that really child abuse was normalized and everything was allowed. It's like Satanists. They do the same things, but I didn't feel like there was anything like that, nor did I experience anything religious until I was 9 years old, and there was a ritual that was organized to please one of the people who were coming to Belgium for the Bilderberg meeting. So this American billionaire, they organized a satanic ritual that had elements of Satanism. Everyone's wearing black robes and hoods, and it was held in the basement of a cathedral. It seemed like it was kind of the opposite of what was going on upstairs. So there was an altar there, a black altar, and there was a pentagram. There were all the elements, and 2 children were given to this billionaire. There was a little boy with me. I was 9 and he was 7, and he was a little slow, mentally challenged, and so I'm sorry, I felt like protecting him. And the interviewer asks her, he was killed in front of you? And she says, yes, I was there. We were 2 children. One was supposed to be sacrificed and the other was supposed to be raped by this billionaire, the special guest. So I was raped, but I was also forced to watch. And then the interviewer says, I'm so sorry you went through this. I can't imagine how a 9-year-old girl must have felt. And she said, yes, there's something I can't. I just wanted to protect this little boy. And I have to say, just to step back from a second from what I'm reading, it was really, really hard to listen to this interview and listen to Anneke recounting what happened. I mean, she's recounting events that happened decades and decades ago, but you can tell that the second she starts talking about it, she's like back there mentally in that place. And as someone who deals with their own unique mental health stuff, who deals with things like PTSD, I am all too familiar with the reality of intrusive thoughts and flashbacks and everything else that comes with surviving really traumatic experiences. And I can tell when Anneke talks about these experiences that she's having those reactions and those feelings inside of her, even though, she has done so much hard work to heal and to be able to be at a place where she can talk about these things. But this is like fucking terrible. This is vile. This is the worst of the worst of the worst. And I don't want to pretend like I'm not acknowledging that or like I can't see that. I am very clearly, I'm taking it all in just as much as anyone else. And my reaction, the kind of like shock value of it, is kind of worn off for me now because I consume so much of this type of thing that like at this point it's kind of like, oh, what else is new? But that's not to say that like it's any less horrifying or any less depraved, because it is. And yeah, if you need to step away and or skip ahead, skip this news article, I completely understand. But if you can stomach it and if you can listen, I really ask that you do, because this is real. If Anneke is to be believed, and I believe her, for the record, this is like the worst of the worst of the worst happening to like the most innocent and vulnerable in our societies, our children. So this is something that needs to be contended with. I know it's really hard to hear. Practice grounding, practice deep breaths, take breaks, but we need to get through this and we need to be talking about this. This cannot be something that we clutch our pearls and like shy away from anymore, because people will continue to get hurt and are probably living through this kind of thing even present day. She says that this little boy's innocence shone through, and at that moment she felt strongly that her innocence was already lost. Quote, I felt so old compared to him, and I loved his innocence, and I wanted to protect him, and also because he was special, maybe because he was crying so hard, so there was nothing that could minimize what was happening in front of me, and it was just, yeah, a lot of terrible things happened, but it was so hard for me. And so then the interviewer says, for us who have empathy and compassion, it's very hard to imagine that not just one person, but a group of people could get together and say to each other, we're going to do this. What do you think? Because most people would scream and call the police or something. How could, I don't even know where to begin. It's so horrible. And she said, yes, that's the special club. So the Minister of National Defense, first there's corruption and greed, and then there's the people who didn't say no when they were confronted with a 6-year-old child. They were already handpicked by the minister to make sure they wouldn't say no, because I've never had anyone say no, and I was always amazed that they wouldn't say, oh my God, that's a little girl, that's a child, I'm not going to do it. So they were clearly pedophiles, and in the system, you know, to be a pedophile, you have to be very isolated. You can't, no sane person would think that a child could be used for sex. It's complete madness. It's really sick. So that's where it all starts. It requires you to be completely sick, and this disease, in my experience, those who needed power were drawn into this system, which at the highest levels becomes completely psychopathic. The interviewer asks, where were your parents in this? She said, as I said, my mother was mentally ill. My stepfather was extremely absent. That's described in my book. I tried to tell him once when I was a kid, but he didn't believe me. The interviewer asks, where were they? Where were they found, these elite? And she says, my mother had a contact who lived not that far away. And this is what I clipped and shared in my vertical video. She was a countess. She was part of the Opus Dei group, a religious group. So a certain level of Opus Dei was involved in this network. And we talk about the minister. He was a Freemason, and a certain level of the Freemasons was also involved in this network. And I think that a lot of the people who were recruited came through the Freemasons or for some club, some secret society where vows had already been taken not to talk about anything and so on. So by the time they were selected, the question is, how much do you want it? No matter how much you want power, and whatever it is, when you lack self-esteem, but you want power, it's not just ambition, because ambition is connected to the self and it's in sync with everything that you are and what you want from life. But this is pure ambition because you lack self-esteem because of a past trauma. So you're running away from your own trauma, from your own shadows by climbing the ladder. And that's what's offered to you. You know, the higher you are, the more you want it, which means the sicker you are, and the more you have no sense of self, the more you're not connected to yourself. It starts with pedophilia, but it's already really extreme. It's extremely common. So it's really extreme to think that it's normal to see a child as a sexual object. It's crazy. All these men were treating me like I was a 6-year-old prostitute, and I knew I wasn't. At least that's what I knew. So before we move on and read any more, I want to come back to this because I think that this might be the most important article in this entire newsroom analysis, if not the most important article that I have ever read, point blank period, at least in terms of talking about these organizations and what they are contributing to, knowingly or not. And in this case, we have a victim survivor of human trafficking, on the record, it's not sworn testimony in front of a judge or anything, but she's saying this with her full chest, and she's not like pretending to pull any punches or anything, that within a certain level of Opus Dei and of the Freemasons and of these other clubs and secret societies where these vows and promises about keeping everything in-house and fealty and service and all of that have already been made, within all of these organizations and groups, at a certain point, it is literally just pedophiles all the way to the top. That's all that's left up there. It's just pedophiles. And it's in all of them. And I mean, if you look at unredacted and released paperwork from the Epstein Files, every single institution, hospital, organization, NGO, and philanthropist under the sun is practically implicated in these Epstein Files. And you really expect me not to believe that that is applicable to our entire world just as it functions? I believe it. I believe that it 100% is, just because of the experiences that I have had, the people that I have talked to, and the things that I have read. I have always known that this world is run by disgusting people who want us to believe that they are untouchable saints on pedestals. I've always known that, and I've always known that they were full of shit. I just knew it. I always have known it, and I've always had a feeling. And now we're seeing the proof. And it kind of feels like equal parts validation and exasperation, because even now with all of this information public, even now with more victim survivors than at any other point in recorded human history speaking out, even now there are still naysayers and detractors who will refuse to contend with the reality that is sitting right in front of them, will refuse to read the official documentation bearing the letterhead of our most respected intelligence communities in this country, if not the world, like the FBI. How you could read all of that stuff and still deny that we are living in a world that at a certain level is run by pedophiles. But people continue to. And it blows my mind. I don't understand it. And maybe that's because I've consumed so much of this information at this point that I'm at like critical saturation. And anything that could convince me of anything at this point, I have seen it, I have read it. I'm like forming solid opinions and perspectives based on like factual events and things that actually happened, based on testimonies from survivors. It's impossible for me to deny any of this. So perhaps it's not fair for me to expect everybody else to be at the same point, because, not everybody else is going to devote years to trying to understand this stuff. But if you're watching this video, that indicates to me that you are at least interested in trying to understand how our world works and how all of these different organizations and institutions and people all fit together, particularly when you are talking about religion, which is such an interesting thing already on its own. Maybe it's not fair for me to be expecting everybody to be at that point with me, but if you're watching this, I would think that you're of that mindset, you want to know more. And if you are still on the fence and like still not sure that you're ready to, believe that Donald Trump might just be one of the worst human beings to ever walk the face of the earth, do a little bit more research, please. That's ultimately the entire point here. I'm not trying to be anyone's one-stop shop for anything. I'm just reading the news. And if I'm reading something out loud and it makes you ask a question or have a thought, and it maybe even makes you a little bit uncomfortable, dig into that. And by dig into it, I don't mean come at me sideways in the comment section upset because I am threatening your rosy perception of reality. I mean dig in a way that's actually authentic. Start trying to educate yourself. Start reading these books, listening to these testimonies. Just go on YouTube and look up Epstein survivor. You're going to find interviews. Start listening to what these people have to say. The last little bit of this article says, In the first few years, I knew that it was wrong, but then this American billionaire, due to unusual circumstances that are really beyond my understanding and have nothing to do with me, became interested in me. And that led me to what I call the global network, where the Belgians were trying very hard to connect with these people, to do business with them and everything else. And then these children, treated as gifts, were the secret currency in this system. I listen to survivors. I listen to the victims who've been through the stuff that I am talking about. I listen to the people with firsthand experience. And when somebody like Anneke Lucas, who has been ringing the bell for years now, whose testimony has never wavered, who has been consistent, when she says that there is a pedophile network at the top of everything, and that these are the people who are kind of like in charge of everything, I believe her. When she says that at a certain point, when you're climbing that ladder to, power and success, that you reach a point where the only thing left is pedophilia, I believe her. I think that we should listen. And when she says that within these organizations, let me just scroll back down to it, within these groups and clubs and secret societies, that at a certain level, it's just pedophiles and that is what is offered, and you will become or conform, or you just will not be a part of what they have going on. I believe them. I believe them because if you have people who have managed to corner the market on something like success, power, and money, they're going to be able to make whatever standards that they want. They're going to be able to make whatever demands that they want, and it's going to be at their mercy that anyone else gets to do anything. And it's being implicated that these are the people that control everything in our world. We live at the mercy of pedophiles.